Donald Trump's renewed tariffs are creating tremors across the global landscape. What began as a strategy to protect American industries has rapidly evolved into a geopolitical backlash.
In Michigan, the center of America's auto industry, the pressure is building fast. Over the summer, President Donald Trump's latest round of tariffs landed like a hammer, and the numbers out of Detroit tell the story.
President Trump is saying the U.S. is taking in trillions of dollars from tariffs, but there are questions as to whether the higher duties are actually benefiting the economy.
As President Trump's tariffs take effect, various industries share, in their own words, the impact on their operations and their bottom lines. As we head out to break, we take a look at the auto industry and how it's being affected by tariff policy.
Imposed by the U.S. by executive order over its purchase of Russian oil and gas, as well as other goods.
General Motors reported that second quarter profits fell by $1 billion, citing new import taxes as a key reason. Stellantis said it lost $2.7 billion in the first half of 2025, pointing to the same cause. Ford's results are due soon, but analysts already expect the same pattern. Trump says these tariffs will bring manufacturing back to the United States. But in Detroit, in Lansing, and across Michigan, the early impact is clear. Higher costs, thinner margins, and a rising fear that these measures are hitting home harder than they are hitting the competition abroad. Since June 2025, imported steel and aluminum, the core metals that go into every frame, chassis, and countless other parts, have carried a 50% tariff.
We are going to be imposing a 25% increase. We're going to bring it from 25% to 50%, the tariffs on steel into the United States of America.
Canada, the largest aluminum supplier to the United States, is now under a 35% rate for goods outside the USMCA deal.
In a letter addressed to Prime Minister Mark Carney and posted on social media, Trump said the U.S. will charge Canada a tariff of 35% on Canadian products sent into the United States.
Mexico has a 90-day reprieve, but faces the threat of the same 50% duties on certain metals and auto parts if talks fail. India's rate has been pushed to 50%, hitting automotive parts that American factories use every day.
If you do reach a deal with Ukraine and Russia, would you drop the additional tariffs on India?
Well, we'll determine that later, but right now they're paying a 50% tariff.
Even imported leather, fabrics, and interior trim from Asia are being taxed heavily. Modern car making is a web of suppliers scattered across continents. A vehicle sold as made in America can still rely on dozens of foreign-sourced components. Many US-based suppliers themselves import critical subcomponents, now taxed before they ever reach the assembly line. At first, the big three automakers took the hit themselves, hoping to shield buyers from price hikes. But the math is relentless. The Center for Automotive Research warns that the 25% tariffs on autos and parts alone could add $108 billion to industry costs this year. That does not include the ripple effects of the 50% steel and aluminum duties or the overlapping tariffs from multiple trade partners. The Alliance for Automotive Innovation has already said these costs will reach the customer. Higher sticker prices will push entry-level cars out of reach and slow the introduction of new technology. Electric vehicle makers are in a tighter spot. The United States still lacks a full-scale domestic battery industry. Batteries and their components must be imported, and they now carry steep tariffs. In Michigan, cutting production means more than fewer cars on the lot. It means fewer jobs in towns that have spent decades climbing out of past downturns. Analysts say that if this policy holds, the next 3 years could bring a steady drop in sales and employment. YouTube is not the biggest fan of content like this, but we believe people deserve to hear the truth. If you agree, hit that like button and subscribe. It helps us beat the algorithm and keep going. We really appreciate the support. Trump frames tariffs as leverage, a way to push trading partners into investing in the US and opening their markets. Canada's Prime Minister Mark Carney has stayed firm, keeping most Canadian exports tariff-free under USMCA while building new trade routes abroad. He argues that steep duties on Canadian metals and parts raise costs for American consumers and manufacturers more than they hurt Canada. It is a clash of two strategies: Trump's high-pressure push for fast concessions versus Carney's slower, steadier approach rooted in alliances and long-term positioning. For America's auto sector, the result will decide whether these policies rebuild domestic output or deepen the losses already showing in the profit reports. In early August, Trump raised the stakes. Canada was locked into a 35% duty on non-USMCA goods. The European Union, Japan, and South Korea accepted lower tariff caps in exchange for concessions. Switzerland was hit with 39% after talks collapsed. Mexico secured its 90-day delay. But tariffs on one country rarely stay about one country. Ottawa is under sustained pressure, and Beijing is moving in ways designed to outlast short-term shocks. For years, nearly all of Canada's oil exports went south to the US. That crude has stayed off the tariff list so far because Washington knows it needs those millions of barrels a day for energy security. That single fact lets Canada absorb tariff blows in other sectors without breaking. Carney has refused to rush into a deal. He is strengthening ties with Mexico, broadening Canada's export markets, and building safeguards for domestic industries. Canada's trump card is energy, and Trump knows it. Tariffs on Canadian oil would raise US consumer prices overnight, a risk Washington is unlikely to take. That interdependence buys Ottawa time to pursue its own timetable. Trump's leverage with China is weaker still. Beijing is tightening control over critical minerals that flow into Western defense supply chains. According to the Wall Street Journal, this control is already delaying production and raising the cost of materials used in weapons, jets, and drones. China controls roughly 60 to 70% of global rare earth mining and close to 90% of refining. Since late 2024, it has tightened export rules for minerals essential to defense manufacturing, from high-temperature magnets for jet engines to specialty alloys for missiles. These are choke points US tariffs cannot touch. China has also been dismantling one of its biggest vulnerabilities, reliance on seaborne oil imports through the US-patrolled Malacca Strait. It has built the largest electric vehicle industry in the world, expanded renewable power generation, and stockpiled oil. In 2024, China imported over 820,000 barrels a day from Russia, 1.44 million from Iran, and about 268,000 from Venezuela, all under US sanctions. Smaller teapot refineries process much of this crude, selling refined fuel across Asia. The result is cheaper feedstock, stronger domestic refining capacity, and a blunting of US sanctions. Both Canada and China are meeting tariffs with moves that hit American vulnerabilities outside the tariff battlefield. Canada leans on its role as a critical energy supplier. China makes essential inputs harder to get and cuts its exposure to US pressure. Neither is trading tariffs blow for blow. Both are playing a longer game. Trump wants visible wins, deals he can point to as proof of American strength. Carney's game is defensive patience. Keep channels open, guard Canada's structural advantages, and avoid quick concessions. Xi Jinping's game is slower still, reshaping industries and supply lines so the next confrontation hurts less. This is no longer about tariff rates on a chart. It is about who can absorb more pain and adapt faster. On August 1st, Trump increased tariffs on Canadian goods outside USMCA from 25 to 35%. It was meant to force Ottawa's hand. Instead, Carney turned inward. His focus is building strength at home through leadership in clean energy, critical minerals, and the AI-driven technology sector. He announced a fast-track framework for mining approvals, cutting the delays that can stretch over a decade. Canada holds large reserves of lithium, nickel, cobalt, copper, and rare earth elements, all critical for electric vehicles, defense, and energy storage. As of 2023, Canada's mineral production exceeded 70 billion Canadian dollars, but much of the potential is still underground. Only half of the current mines are Canadian-owned, and less than a third of refining happens inside the country. Carney's goal is to change that, turning Canada from a raw exporter into a full supply chain partner. With global demand for rare earth magnets expected to more than double by 2035, this is more than an economic play. It is leverage. Trump's administration is still looking abroad for minerals, even from adversaries. In recent weeks, he floated buying rare earths from Russia, suggesting deals could justify easing sanctions. Meanwhile, tensions with China remain unresolved. After Trump's second-term tariffs hit 145% in April, China cut exports of heavy rare earths.
We've been dealing very nicely with China, as you probably have heard. They have tremendous tariffs that they're paying to the United States of America.
Tesla and Ford faced disruptions. Suzuki halted production. In that context, Canada's position is hard to ignore. A stable democratic neighbor with the resources America needs, now burdened by US tariffs. Carney is using the pressure to push transformation. Bill C-5, the One Canadian Economy Act, is designed to speed mining projects and expand domestic refining. Companies like Electrovaya are already shipping high-performance lithium-ion batteries to Japan and the US, showing what a vertically integrated Canadian mineral industry could look like. Trump's tariff-first approach delivers quick headlines, but the risk of alienating Canada grows. Lose access to Canadian minerals, and the US risks bottlenecks in EV production, AI hardware, and military supply chains. The Department of Defense has already poured more than $500 million into domestic rare earth projects, including $400 million for MP materials, to cut dependence on China. But those are years away from replacing imports. Right now, Canada is the most viable source, and Carney knows it. By refusing to retaliate impulsively, he is making Canada more valuable over time. In the long run, you do not win a trade war by talking louder. You win it by becoming the supplier no one can replace.